Hello everyone, my name is Vaclav Ryska. I'm a freelance software developer from Czech Republic. Today I would like to talk about how to keep pace with new technologies. My presentation will have two main goals. First, to offer an approach and tips how to learn new technologies more effectively and properly. And the second one, I would like to help to choose which technologies to learn and which don't. I grouped those tips into learning framework, which is a basic process I apply for learning. It's a bunch of techniques or tips which I consider very helpful and effective when learning new technologies or skills in general. And don't worry, it's no rocket science. So let's move on. At the beginning, I would like to give you a brief motivation why to learn new technologies, but I believe that it's not much necessary because you are watching this presentation, so let's keep it short. At first, maybe I'm another typical guy who needs to try every new technology. For example, I still even use a paper notebook for some purposes, but there are definitely technologies worth learning. So first reason, in my opinion, why to learn new technologies is to remain competitive. For example, especially in software development, today the technology of Git and generally versioning systems is crucial to master somehow. For example, I can't imagine developing software today without using Git or some other tool for versioning. And if there are software developers who don't use Git, I think they are in general much less competitive than the others. Another reason why to learn new technologies is they definitely can save your time. It's not always true for every technology, but the appropriate technologies surely do save your time. Another two reasons, let's say, are in general to make your life easier. For example, who of you remember, let's say, the use case when you wanted to share some file to somebody, let's say 10, 15 years ago? Yeah, without cloud, it was a bit pain and it was quite difficult, I think. And today with the technology of cloud, it's, let's say, on couple clicks and you can provide the file you want to whoever you want. And of course, if you master the technology which is helpful for your customer, it's often win-win situation. Ideally, it will allow you to provide better value for the customer, and it's also done for a shorter amount of time. Yeah, so you definitely find more motivation why to learn new technologies. But let's go to the process I mentioned at the beginning, and I call it learning framework, because learning in general is a process, and processes are often important for freelancers. So here you can see key points helping me to learn any complex knowledge relatively quickly and well. However, it's not necessary to use all of them. Each is useful on its own, definitely. Yeah, so the list is not dogmatic, and everybody is unique and prefers different approaches. So, as I said, you don't necessarily need to go through all of those steps. So maybe consider it rather as a kind of inspiration or a basic structure how to learn. It's also good to iterate these steps for smaller pieces of knowledge if possible. For example, you want to learn some programming language and you take some part of it, and you can on that part iterate through all of these steps. Great. So I will now gradually go through all of these steps and I'll explain them more in detail. So first is reserve time. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, I think, but often I think it's a quite underestimated point, because learning new things needs concentration. And when you are constantly disturbed by something, it's hard to keep the concentration. So I really recommend to book at least a half day long block for some, let's say, complex learning, and keep your focus. I understand that not everybody can afford that, but it works for me pretty well, because learning complex things or technologies usually doesn't work well when you are trying to learn it somewhere in the meantime. For example, when you are going by train and when you have suddenly 1 hour of free time. I don't think it's a good approach for learning something complex, but definitely that time is helpful or useful for, let's say, listening to podcasts or learning some additional things, but not the main point of the technologies. So this is my recommendation. Definitely book your calendar, turn off your phone, and have a full attention for the subject you are learning. The next step in the whole learning framework is to choose wisely. It's divided into two parts. The first is choose the technologies wisely, because not every technology which appears and it's hot now and trendy is worth learning, So it's a good practice to pick carefully, and I very recommend to do a quick research before you start to learn something. Do not just blindly start learning some technology because it's cool now. Or if you know somebody who already mastered the skill you want to learn, ask them, definitely. They provide you a very, very good feedback, usually because they have experience with the technology. And also, here you can see at the slide the key question I ask myself when I'm considering some new technology. And sometimes you will go to the point that you decide that you don't want to learn the technology, and it's, for example, a good candidate for outsourcing, because you, for example, know that the community around the technology is not so friendly, or the technology is not so unique, or not so engaging. And in that case, if you need the technology, you can outsource it. You can find some professionals who are okay with that skill, and they can definitely help you. So yeah, choose the technologies wisely. It's always beneficial. And the second one, in case of choosing, is choose the resources wisely, because as I said, everybody prefers something different, and everybody is fine with different sources. So I would like to go briefly around that. Here at the top, there are 4 sources which I consider basically the main sources. Here are books, some courses, some learning platforms, and of course the documentation. All of them have some drawbacks and positives. For example, the books have usually steeper learning curve, and they are quite time consuming, and they are also usually not available for the newest technologies because it took time to write a book. But their main benefit is that they provide structural, deep understanding in consequences of the technology. So I really like them. And if you want to know the technology complexly and thoroughly, I definitely recommend to use books. Another resource are courses. Their drawback is that they are usually much expensive than the others, but they usually have a friendly learning curve. and they usually provide condensed, distilled know-how from the lector. They also offer possibilities to interact with the lector, which is also very beneficial, because typically when you are learning something, many problems and questions arise, and is always great when you have somebody to ask. So this is one of the big benefits of the courses. Another resource which is often used in today's world are the learning platforms and online courses. And their biggest advantage is that they are self-paced. You can choose your own pace, how to go through that, and that's very great. But from my experience, they are usually not so useful for some deep topics. Yeah, they are very, very great for jump starts and quick intros into the technologies. But when you have some particular question which is a bit deeper, they not always provide a good answer. On the other hand, there are typically the documentations where you usually can find answers to your questions, to your particular questions, which are quite deeper. Also, the documentations are usually for free, but they have a various quality. Some of them are very well written, but some of them not so well. And also, one thing to mention regarding the documentations, they are usually more technical than educational. So if you prefer some more educational approach, documentations are not so suitable for you. And here at the bottom, there are four main resources, four more resources, sorry. And I call them additional. There are podcasts, some videos, blog posts, and also attending conferences and meetups. All of them have their place in the process of learning, and I also would like to describe them a bit closer. All of them can give you the different view at the technology. Yeah, they are also helpful when you want to connect the dots around the technology. So they often give you a different meaning. Those resources are also very helpful when you are deciding if the technology is worth learning or not, because there are plenty of some comprehensive, for example, blog posts and so on. So I really recommend them to use also in the phase of deciding if the technology is worth learning or not. And here the last one additional resource is to attending the conferences or meetup or some mastermind group for freelancers. This is a great possibility of meeting creators or users of the technology you are learning, and very often they solve similar issues as you, similar problems, and you can discuss it with them, and you can find a solution, for example, together, which is also great. You can also share the experience or get the tips and contacts there. So I really recommend to go to conferences and meetups. There are also great people there. Yeah. So this is the second part of choosing wisely. Not only choose the technology wisely, but choose also the resource wisely, because it can really speed up the process of your learning. Yeah, great. Another point in the process of learning is taking notes. It may seem a bit old school, but it's a great tool that deepens the understanding. And for example, I know a lot of people who read a whole technical book, which is quite challenging, and they don't take a single note. And I also said, when you have interest and effort in learning, take from it as much as you can, And taking notes is definitely, in my opinion, one of the possibilities how you can take more from your learning. You can ask what to take exactly into the notes, and I recommend write key takeaways and thoughts and paraphrase. Don't just copy and paste. Use your own words, and mark also sources where do you take those notes from. For example, page in the book or the minute of the podcast or the video. It's also helpful when you want to get back to that. Yeah. And also if you can make the notes visual. Yeah, because the imagination is also a great approach how to remember things. So I would give you maybe one more advice. Always try to imagine yourself reading the notes 1 month or 1 year after you wrote them, and if they make you a sense, they are usually written well. So definitely taking notes is one of the steps in the process, which is very beneficial. Another one is sleep well. In my opinion, this is the most underestimated point in the whole process of learning. And in today's world, many people do not sleep enough, considering it an effective time of the day. But I think the opposite is true. Main source of this knowledge for me was the book Why We Sleep from Matthew Walker. He describes there a lot of scientific experiments about sleeping. For example, students before exams at the university divided into 2 groups. The first group learned and then slept well, and the second group went to the party, drank alcohol after learning, and surprisingly, their results were quite different. Those who slept well have much better results than those who didn't. So I really recommend to sleep well. At least 6 hours a day is fine, and I think it's really helpful. And from my experience, it's a totally different story when the person starts sleeping well, even in the life in general. So that's for that. Another and the most important step in the whole process of learning is, in my opinion, applying the knowledge. Yeah, it depends the understanding, similar as taking a notes, but I think it's much more than that. Yeah, I really recommend to apply the knowledge you learned as soon as possible. For example, from my experience, in past I was often lazy to try examples in programming books or to follow exercises in some online courses because it seemed clear to me. But when I tried to write the code myself, suddenly it wasn't so easy, So many questions, problems, and finding may arise during the process, which could be very frustrating, but it's also helpful. So, as I said, apply the knowledge as soon as you can. For example, ideal space where you can apply the knowledge are the hobby projects. Yeah. Those also can be used as a reference for persuading customers. And especially in software development are such projects very common and helpful. So definitely go for it if you have time. And also you can apply the knowledge well when you are surrounded by skilled professionals. Yeah, today developing software is not usually a one-man show. It's usually done in some teams, and when you surround yourself by skillful professional, it definitely helps to apply the knowledge more properly and, let's say, faster. Yeah. And the last point here are the certification. Honestly, I'm not a very big fan of certifications in general, but they also can help sometimes to understand the knowledge better, because there could be some questions which you didn't consider and so on. So definitely it's not a bad thing. And main benefit of the certification I see is that they usually make a good impact on customers. Yeah. So definitely this is the most important step in the whole process of learning. And as I said, apply the knowledge as soon as you can. And when you learn something, applied it, then don't be shy to share it. Yeah. It's another level of integration of the knowledge into your brain. And today we have so much possibilities how to share the knowledge, and every time you share it, it gives you a bit different point of view. So as I said, don't be shy to talk about it. Try to explain the technology to some other people. I may give you one example also from my life. For example, at the university, at the first year, I learned the subject linear algebra for mathematics. And then during my PhD studies, after 5 years, I taught that subject, and it gave me a totally different perspective and point of view to that subject. So I really recommend to share the knowledge. Today you can, write a blog post, record a podcast, record a video, or you can offer a consultation, have a discussion with somebody. Everybody, as I said, prefers something different, but I really recommend to share the knowledge in general. Yeah, so those were the steps in the learning framework. At the end, I would like to summarize the most important of them, the key takeaways from the presentation. So please take your time, reserve the time for learning. It's definitely worthy. Then choose wisely the technology you want to learn, because it takes time, and choose also the resources wisely which you will use. And then the most important thing, as soon as you can, apply the knowledge after the learning. Yeah. And then if you are open to it, don't be shy to share it. And as I said, you can do it iteratively during the whole process. And of course, at the end, if you share the knowledge, you can always collect the feedback. It's also very beneficial. So thank you for your attention. And if you will have any questions, you may ask. Thank you.